Good morning, Wednesday morning, and a beautiful, almost spring day. Sure feels like spring here in the South. Going to touch almost 80 today in the South, Nick. Sunny and dry and just about perfect in March. Let's bring in our Facebook groups. That's Atlanta Falcons on SI and Scott Kennedy Sports. And we will get going live as we're ready to talk some draft, some Kirk Cousins naturally. We'll see how much y'all want to talk about him. There's some little bit of new news coming out. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is Wednesday morning. We go live every Monday and Wednesday morning on YouTube and Facebook. And it is like dead smack in the middle of my favorite time of the year. We're between free agency. We're between the NFL draft. Lots to talk about. There's still some guys out there in free agency, but it feels like most people have kind of pivoted towards draft if they're not talking quarterbacks, with Aaron Rodgers still dominating the headlines right now and Kirk Cousins still in the news cycle, among others. But it is one of my favorite times of the year, Nick. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I think I got another new cold from Mills, so that's great. He was kind of ramping down, and then yesterday Daker's like, he's coughing more again. I'm like, I noticed that too. Coughing last night, and I'm starting to get stepped up again. So, it's spring, and all these kids, put everything in their mouth, and that's life. But we're getting by, and excited to talk football. I'm getting to the point. I'm with you, Scott. I always enjoy the offseason and the NFL team building thing, but I really don't like how long free agency is from the NFL draft. Now, I know you have the team visits and everything, but I wish we could bump up the draft instead of, what is it this year? April 25th, 24th or something like that. Can we have it April 10th? Let's move it up a week and a half, 2 weeks. I don't need to wait another 5 weeks for the NFL draft now.
Yeah, I feel like you do the combine and then a month is plenty for pro days. I don't need 2 months for pro days on that.
3 months.
So I think the month is plenty. You're not doing pro days April 20th anyway. There are some individual workouts though where they'll go to pro days and then invite the guys down. I'm trying to think, what's the benefit here? I mean, the longer the scouting cycle, I don't know, sometimes you can fall victim to too much information. Mm-hmm. Where familiarity breeds contempt, where you really like this guy who's kind of an unknown. And I've seen every single wart on every single play that a Georgia Bulldog has made because I've watched them so many times, something like that, where, the unknown factor, well, he's not this guy, so he must be better, type of thing. We see that all the time with new signings to the practice squad. Oh, he's the next guy. I'm like, no, he's not. He's a practice squad guy. Yeah, but he's got to be better than this dude.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. So yeah, it's kind of weird. You had that big bump of free agency, and now it's the first little real big pause of the offseason. You have the dust settling, and should be fun. But you're right, teams can overthink these things. But hey, you know what? We got time to talk draft. We got time to get really into it and go position by position and everything like that. So exciting all the same. We did get some news today on the quarterback front, Scott. I don't know if you saw this, but Tom Pelissero. A lot of people have been, I guess, calling off the hooks about JJ McCarthy with the Vikings, and he tweets that the Vikings have rejected multiple trade calls on JJ McCarthy, telling other teams they're moving forward with him as the quarterback. Team does plan to add a veteran, but they're not pursuing Aaron Rodgers at this time. McCarthy now enters offseason as QB1. So McCarthy was on the table. That does kind of impact the Falcons, right? Because they're what's going on with Kirk Cousins. Teams looking all the links last year with McCarthy as well, potentially with the Falcons. So we'll see what happens with the Vikings. Looking for a veteran still.
Yeah, I think they're still in the market. I think Kirk Cousins is still a possibility there. It's always been remote. I mean, he wants to be a starter, and we don't know how close J.J. McCarthy is to starting. Honestly, we don't know how ready he actually is. Last year wasn't just a redshirt year. It was an injury year. So he's still young. We talk about this whole idea of, people say stuff like fact and, there's studies that show if you sit behind a guy for a year and play, you're better. Well, maybe your first year, but I'll take a second-year player over a first-year player. And then the second part of that is we're entering a new dynamic where we've got 24-year-olds entering the NFL that are good. That we're not talking about, okay, the guys that are entering the NFL that are more mature, they played 5 years in college because they weren't good enough to get drafted. These guys, Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, things changed a little bit. And it's going to be like that more often, where you're going to typically get There'll be exceptions, of course, but you're going to get older, more mature players coming out of college because they're making a ton of money, especially these quarterbacks to come out. Unless you are a first-round pick, a quarterback at a Power 5 school is going to make more money in college. And good for them. Good for them. It's good for the game. Long term, it will be good for the quality. Now, whether you fooled yourself into thinking that they're playing for the school, that will go away. That illusion is gone. These are professionals. Mm-hmm. But the quality of the game, I think, should go up.
Yeah, I still think, your skill position players, your guy like wide receivers, mm-hmm. running backs, cornerbacks, those ones that, especially the really good ones, day one, I wish there was a waiver system or something where some guys could come immediately. Like, do we really need to have?
I think it'll come with everybody being professional now. I think the 3-year rule will go away or change some.
Like Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, does he really need to play 2? Like, he's getting compensated. Thank God for that, because otherwise it would be really criminal. But does he really need to play 2 more years of college when he'd be the number 1 overall pick in this draft, potentially? If not a quarterback, he'd be the next guy off the board. I don't think that's right. But, like offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, quarterback, tight end, those positions that typically are developmental, you get guys that come from smaller schools also for those ones. So they have a chance to move up the rank. I know that's it stinks for the mid-majors, a lot of those programs, but you're Braden Fisk, right? Was he Central Michigan for a number of years, goes to Florida State, has a great season. You're seeing that more and more, but it is changing the landscape of the game. I do agree with you, though. It is taking a little bit of the risk away, and not just, the evaluation on the field perspective, Scott, but now these guys are getting big boy money. So it's not as much the question anymore of like what happens now that he's in a bigger city, his Q rating's risen a lot, and he's driving these crazy cars with money to throw around. Is he, partying every night and going to the strip club and not taking care of himself? We can find that out now rather than the question from college. Granted, some programs it wasn't a question anyway. They're already getting the money and things are happening, but definitely across the board, it's a really changing landscape, and it's fun to be a part. And it's still changing. The dust has not settled there yet either.
I agree, and good philosophical questions. I've had this one up from Carrie. I wanted to talk about this. This was one of the things I wanted to hit. I didn't put it. We'll get to the title of the show. Some of the things we want to get to today. The title of the show was the mock draft from 2 of the biggest names in the industry, and the differences, because there are some significant differences between Mel Kiper Jr.'s mock draft and Daniel Jeremiah on NFL.com's mock draft. Now, the group think those things tend to come together and end up being about one big board by the end of April. But there's some significant differences right now, especially who is available to the Falcons. And but the other thing that came out was Josiah Anderson is talking about that 2 quarterbacks, 2 veteran quarterbacks potentially on the move, and Kirk Cousins is one of them. And what she said that the Falcons had been talked about a 3rd round pick as teams were calling on Kirk Cousins, calling on the Atlanta Falcons. But Josina Anderson says, I was just told these 2 quarterback names came up in recent preliminary trade inquiries or internal discussions per league source, Kirk Cousins and Will Levis. Atlanta has been getting calls. I heard talk of a 3rd round pick potentially being actionable. And that's what Carrie's referring to in here. She says, if that's true, don't hang up, Terry. If the Falcons get a 3rd round pick out of this and even a little bit of money back from the contract. Now, I think 27.5 plus the 10 million, let's just call it 40 million. The 40 million that is still guaranteed to Kirk Cousins, I think that's a pipe dream. But if you can get a 3rd round pick out of this and a little bit of money back, I've said day 3 and $5 million is what I've said the whole time. So for me, the number is $5 million. You get $5 million back in a 3rd round pick. I think that is well done getting out of a bad situation, self-imposed bad situation. But I think that would be very well done by the Atlanta Falcons to salvage a bad deal.
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons it is a bad deal, right? In hindsight, obviously you don't do this, but a little bit fortunate that this is such a anemic quarterback draft class. There's just not a lot of options. It's musical chairs, and there's 1 to 3 chairs, and 5 to 6 teams looking to sit. So somebody's going to need something. A third-round pick does seem a little high. The one caveat I'll toss in there is she didn't specify what year that third-round pick is either. So it could be something, 2026 third-rounder down the line. But even still, I mean, to get a top 100 pick back to clear the salary would be good. I'm not sure how much Kirk Cousins' role would have in this as well. Like, I don't know, like, just trade him to the Giants. Would he accept a trade to the Giants? I believe he has a no trade clause in there. So it's going to take a little bit of two to tango with him as well. But getting a top 100 pick for him, that's a high chance at a developmental starter down the line, probably not 2025, but 2026, 2027. That's a good get for a team that's lacking draft capital and up against it salary cap wise. So we're keeping our ear on it. I still think it's probably going to be a day 3 pick in the end, up to a third round. We'll see. Even a fourth rounder in the money savings is good to get out of it, considering the position the Falcons are in. But yeah, that's good news for Atlanta.
And Chris says to free up 60 to 70 million, I'd take a cheeseburger for him. Yeah, that's not it, Chris. If someone would say, we'll do a pick swap, the Falcons would send somebody a pick if they would take $40 million in Kirk Cousins. So the money here is the big thing. And it's 27.5 guaranteed this year. And if they were to move him and get the 27.5 off, really the 10 would go away then. See, this is a little confusing to me. The 10 million for 2026 would go away. The dead cap that would still be owed on him would be 37.5. Why? Because they gave him a $50 million signing bonus on a 4-year deal. They took that across 4 years. So it was 12.5 million, 12.5 million, 12.5 million, and 12.5 million. They've already paid him that. So they have already paid out $62 million. So they paid him 12.5 in cash in salary last year, and they gave him $50 million. So they paid him 62.5. All they have taken on the books was last year, 25 million. I know this is confusing, but what happens is if they trade him, some team picks up whatever they negotiate of his 27.5 million guaranteed salary, and then the remainder of his 37.5 million signing bonus accelerates to right now. Now you can spread that across 2 years, but instead of a $65 or $75 million dead cap, you've got 37.5 plus whatever the other team decides to take from the 27.5 million, which could be $5 to $10 million. So you go from $75 million of what is still on the books for Kirk Cousins to $45 million. Yeah. Or, no, it would be minus. So it would be plus 20. So, but it would be $50 million in a third round pick. Yeah. You would do something like that. You would have to, rather than sit back and say, oh, he could be I get these arguments, Nick. Oh, we'd have the best backup in the league. Oh man, you don't want to debate me on that, because I will shred you on so many different points, from who's lying about who's hurt. He wasn't very good last year. Oh, but he was hurt. Yeah, but he said the team said he wasn't. So who's lying? Who's incompetent here? It's all bad if Kirk is still on the roster come week 1.
Yeah, just the dynamics in the locker room would have to be weird. But Falcons, with the way the contract is set up, they're holding on to him and hoping to get some assets back. So yeah, as Archangel says, a toxic locker room. I do think Kirk is a professional, but it would be, in the very least, exceedingly awkward and uncomfortable. So
yeah, you're not getting the best version of Kirk Cousins. He'd be the best backup. You really think? I mean, we already know he's going to skip OTAs, optional. You think he's giving it his all every day when he really wants out of there? Whew. Y'all have been around people like that at work. You're like, dude, just leave already. That's a different. This is contractual, but it's bad. It's just bad.
There's a term for that, Scott. It's called quiet quitting. That's a Zoomer term there, I think. But August makes a good point too, that Cousins got injured against the Saints, which explains the sudden decline. He obviously didn't want Penix taking snaps. He was playing well in the first half of the season. Granted, his statistics are, what a picture there, August too. I don't know if that's your own photo, but anything mountains, I'm there. But it does explain it. I will say his statistical output's a little bit weighted against those unbelievable games against the Buccaneers, right? Like those were outliers compared to the general sample, but they still count to the overall sample, so that's fine. And yeah, he had that injury versus the Saints and fell off from there. And if it was a normal situation, would Penix have held out because he didn't want to be Wally pipped? Old reference there for the kids at home. But it's really just an interesting dynamic. And when you take that quarterback, at 8 overall and Michael Penix, the dynamics change. So it's a good thing for the Falcons in hindsight, obviously. Otherwise, we'd be trying to talk ourselves into Kirk Cousins this season after he was hurt. It's going to be different this season. Well, now you have a big picture, more tangible optimism. But we will see what happens. And I think some teams bring him in. What he's talked about Kirk talked about at the Super Bowl. I could see a team talking themselves into it because desperation at quarterback drives the league, at least half the league.
Hucklebuck says, "Tell Kirk, it is Kirk. Everybody, I've seen Kurt spelled 4 different ways. I saw it yesterday. Kirt, Kirk Cousins." On this, tell him to waive his no trade clause. Period. Hucklebuck, are you under the impression that Kirk Cousins is the one holding back a move here? He ain't. This is coming down to what can the Falcons accept, partially to save face, but what can they maximize? If there's demand out there, then Kirk becomes more valuable by waiting. He does. He becomes more valuable by waiting as these teams get more and more desperate for a starting quarterback. This is on the Falcons. Kirk Cousins wants out. I don't think he's going to hold back. He's going to say, "No, I'm not going to that team." It's not going to happen. Not anymore. I don't think that's going to happen. So this isn't on Kirk Cousins until you actually hear there was a deal in place and Kirk Cousins invoked his no trade clause. Then we can talk about it. But until now, this isn't on. A team hasn't been willing to trade for the Atlanta Falcons because they don't feel the need to yet. Mm-hmm. We have free agency, we've got the draft, and we still don't believe you're going to really keep him on your team. We're going to kick back and wait for you to cut him. But Falcons could do that all the way until August, September. They could wait until right up until the preseason, even the season starts before they're going to do that. There's no rush now. They could IR. Oh, you were hurt? Okay, we're going to IR you. And just mothball the guy. You're going to go over there and practice with the reserves and with the 90-man squad over there. They can push him out there. So this isn't on Kirk Cousins yet. And it's the Falcons waiting for an offer or paying Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, and I do think I'm just going to choose to think that Hucklebuck is a little tongue-in-cheek there, calling him Kurt as a disparaging comment, not giving
now everybody's calling him Kurt.
Yeah. I think that's that makes some sense. I get it. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with Kirk Cousins. It'll be interesting, man. This saga, I'm just ready for it to end. And if you guys can get even if it's a 4th round pick and some salary cap relief,
I've said it, a day 3, which is a 4th, day 3 and $5 million is something.
Wash your hands.
Right now you're looking at nothing.
Yeah.
But Chris, you say Kirk wasn't hurt physically. He said that to save face to owners and GMs across the league. Okay. If that's true, like I said, you really don't want to debate me on this. If this part's true, let's say this is true. Mm-hmm. Then why would anybody trade for him? Because he was cheeks if he wasn't hurt. So either he was hurt and the Atlanta Falcons are morons for throwing him out there for 6 weeks, or he wasn't hurt and he's just ass. Both of these look bad for the Atlanta Falcons. Both of them are bad.
Yeah.
There's no good answer here. I mean, there isn't. So if you come out of this with a day 2 pick and some cash, holy holies, you did a good job. You did a really good job in staying the course on this to get something back.
Yeah, it's kind of that would turning this Kirk Cousins contract, Kurt, whatever. You guys are going to mess me up now, into a day 3 pick and some cap savings kind of would remind me of the beginning of Pirates of the Caribbean, Captain Jack Sparrow pulling the sinking boat into port. And as soon as it sinks, he just hops off. Like that's kind of dumping Kirk Cousins there for a day 3 pick and some cap relief, just in the nick of time. Obviously the boat sank, but you didn't get completely wet doing that. So yeah, it's, again, we keep saying, I see it in the chat too. It's correct, especially with this NFL draft class and where the Falcons are picking. thank goodness you guys got Michael Penix. That doesn't mean he's going to end up being a superstar, but at least there's like tangible hope for this team and direction. And if he falls flat this season, 2026 draft class will be better at quarterback again. But you have reason to be optimistic, even if the team itself probably isn't competing for the playoffs this season. We'll see. If he ends up being a top 10 quarterback, anything can happen. But
I said the Monday after the draft,
much better than convincing ourselves with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah. I said the Monday after the draft, every move they've made looks like they're trying to make up. It was buyer's remorse. Looks like they owe Shinola. We screwed up. Now we need to start building towards getting out of signing Kirk Cousins to $100 million guaranteed. And it has played out that way almost perfectly. Y'all know I'm a big international soccer fan. Cheeks is one of those words that they use to describe the English players. The English fans use to describe players, and I think it's funny. It's cheeks. He was cheeks. I like that one. So that was good. But yes, I mean, we said we can roll. Y'all, there's a lot of people. If you're watching in April or in late March, you were probably watching a year ago. There's a lot of people that have stuck around. My diehards are here right now. And, our first choice was always a cheap veteran bridge and drafting a rookie. It was a good quarterback class. You had number 8 and getting a rookie. That was always the way to go. And, when you have a 24-year-old rookie, play him. But at that point, it was too late. They'd already made the mistake of signing Kirk Cousins to $90+ million guaranteed. Now, let's get to Floyd. Do you guys see Atlanta choosing at 15 that the defensive tackle Alexander? I think that's a little high. Darius Alexander, the defensive lineman. He's kind of do you think he's an inside a 3 technique for sure? Or do you think he could play end in a 3-4?
He could play end in a 3-4. I think he's versatile enough. I think he's probably best in a more penetration style front as opposed to, 2-gapping. You don't want him just to sit there and anchor and free up linebackers. You want him to use his hands, his length, and his slipperiness and versatility to get after the quarterback. And when we saw it at the Senior Bowl, he was lined up all the way at 7 technique and winning with his size versatility. So 7 technique all the way to 3, maybe in some NASCAR fronts where you're obvious, like it's 3rd and 13, 1 technique kind of stuff, but hopefully not too much jargon for you guys at home. But that's my role for Alexander. I do think he's probably more in that 25th overall, the 40th range in this draft class. He tested fine, but the big caveat is that he's pretty old, Scott. And does that matter? I mean, I think he's going to be 25 this season. So for a player like that, it's sometimes it is a man amongst boys. He's still very good. That a lot of if you look at round 2, round 3, a lot of how many of those guys actually hit their second contract, not 50% or something, so if he's always old, he's only going to get 1 contract. Okay. That's most of the guys anyway. Can he be a good player? That's fine. But for talking 15, how much physically developed he is already. And there's a reason. It's not like he just kind of was, an idiot and ineligible or not getting his stuff together. He tried for a year at offensive tackle out there at Toledo as well. So it was kind of moving around trying to find his spot. So he's still talented. I just think 15's a little bit early for him. Now, if you trade back 10, 15 picks, then we're in the ballpark.
Yeah, Floyd, this is repeating. This is the 3rd time this has come through for some reason. I don't know if it's on your phone or whatnot. But I would like Darius Alexander and a 2nd round pick. That's how I want. At 15, no. At 25 with a 2nd round trade, yes. That would interest me then. Evan J, I usually try and lawyer myself in these when it comes to speaking in absolutes. I almost always give myself an out and try not to speak in absolutes because this is the kind of stuff that happens. In 25 years, I only used an absolute with a recruit 1 time. There was a kid, his name was Anthony Barnes. He was a Cartersville big jumbo athlete, and Georgia Tech was recruiting him. I said, there is no way he's going to Georgia Tech because he's not going to qualify. No way he is signing with Georgia Tech because he doesn't have the grades for it. He's not going to qualify. No way, not going to happen. Georgia Tech signed him. And he's the only player in the 40 years I've been following recruiting that did not qualify to get into Georgia Tech. Like, this is the kind of stuff that happens. It's the kind of stuff that happens. I went to Auburn, right? Auburn basketball, #1 overall seed. They had 2 losses before they won the SEC championship, Florida and Duke. My wife went to Duke and grew up in Gainesville with a whole house full of Gators. This is the kind of stuff that happens. Evan says, ever since the draft last year when you said we'd be floored if they took a QB at 8, I'm terrified when you say the same about Kirk still being on the roster or going a non-premium position at 15. Evan, here's the one I'm going to say that's going to totally screw everything up, because I was thinking about this. I'm okay with a non-premium position. I've seen Jalen Walker in the top 10. If Jalen Walker is okay, here's the question, Nick, and this is the one that's going to screw everything up. How can the Falcons screw up 15? I don't think they can. Let me put a caveat on that. You can miss guys. You can miss. That happens all the time. Oh, this guy ended up better than that one. That's not what I'm talking about. I think it is almost impossible for the Atlanta Falcons to draft a misfit for their team at 15, because they're not going to go quarterback. They're not going to go running back. Everything else I can make an argument for. Every other position other than special teams, let's not get too crazy here, kicker and punter, I can make an argument for every single position. Safety, linebacker, tight end. 3 non-premium positions. They're not going guard. So I guess that's the other one I'd take off the table. That would be the other one that would be like, oh my God, kill me now, as if they drafted a guard. I think Gray Zabel's off the table.
He can play center, though.
There we go.
He can play center.
Yeah, I mean, he could play center.
Yeah, he did really good.
He might not be off the table, but I don't think they could draft a misfit like they did with Kyle Pitts at number 4, with no defense, no offensive line, and an aging 36-year-old bad contract quarterback. Drafting a pass catcher there didn't make any sense to me. To a certain extent, it didn't make sense to me the next year with Drake London, but that wasn't nearly as good a draft. You didn't pass on all the other players to take the tight end the highest ever.
Yeah.
This year, I can make an argument for any position. So it's hard for me to say. I will say they cannot draft it. They will not draft a misfit at 15.
Yeah, like you said, you can miss on the player, and that is a concern, of course. And it does seem pretty tilted towards the defense, because they just need to start throwing logs on the fire on that side. But with how much Penix, especially with his arm, if you can get another dynamic weapon, if you're going to be 11 personnel heavy, which the Falcons have, well, it's so weird because you have Kyle Pitts. Like, what is he actually? But if you want to be 11 personnel heavy and transition out from that, like Kyle Pitts, then wide receiver makes sense in a vacuum. I don't know if it makes sense in this class because it's not loaded with like great wide receivers. So that kind of makes it harder. Offensive tackle also is kind of weird. McGrady is still here, but Gary, excuse me. And you don't have like an on-ramp for them to play guard year 1 and then transition out to offensive tackle. So I think offensive tackle, wide receiver also lower down the board. Tight end, I mean, again, it's a deep class. It's anywhere on the defense I can be okay with. Offense, I can squint and see the argument. You mentioned like Gray Zabel as well at center, protecting Penix, got to be priority number 1. But with where you sit at 15, it's probably got to be a defensive player. I just, add a log somewhere. And as you mentioned, even if it's not a premium position, if you think the world of Jihad Campbell, Malachi Starks, Barron playing the slot instead of boundary cornerback, you mentioned Jalen Walker, Amanda Worry, those guys, if you think the world of them, take the good player at the end. Your boards should be tilted towards the premium positions. And when you see people's big boards, guess what? They pretty much already are. Tilted for the premium positions. There are weights on those grades and positions. So we'll see what happens with them all the same, but it's going to be more about drafting the right guy versus not drafting the wrong position.
Yeah. The Falcons made Kyle Pitts the highest drafted tight end ever, going against the norm here. The Falcons gave a bridge quarterback $100 million and then drafted a rookie, spent a top 10 pick on a rookie. That's never been done before. Those kind of things don't typically work out for the Atlanta Falcons when they try and step out of the box. I understand, things haven't been working. We got to change things up. But there's a reason why I said I'd be floored if they did it. They took over. You don't give a guy $100 million and then it's never been done. You don't do that because it's a waste of $100 million. You spend $10 million on Sam Darnold. And I remember someone in the comments, oh, you guys would have killed the Falcons if they took Sam Darnold. I'm like, no, I wouldn't, because he's not your starter. Your 24-year-old rookie is your starter. Sam Darnold's your veteran backup on that. Anyway, let's move on from that.
The guys we advocated for, Scott, and I'll own it. I said, Kirk Cousins with the offense coming in, that's if you go Kirk Cousins, then you can not go to the draft and go defense, go edge rusher, versus Latu, Turner, whatever. But if it was the bridge quarterback, the three names we brought up, which again, not novel, these were the guys that were available, but you very much were Russell Wilson because you wouldn't have to pay him diddly to bring him in. Justin Fields, just because of the lottery ticket. And I was like, I'd still be interested in Sam Darnold as well. And I know you've been not a fan of Sam Darnold dating back to the USC days.
I've been a detractor. I've seen him since he was at San Clemente in high school and thought he was I thought he's been overrated pretty much since he signed with USC.
Yeah. We'll see how he does.
That's a bias. That's a bias of mine that I've taken with me. I will fully admit it.
Yeah. We'll see how he does out here in the PNW. Yeah, maybe he's a neighbor now. I don't know. I saw him and both Cooper Kupp, wearing flannels when they were signing their contracts up here in Seattle. They're ready. It's winter is long out here, dark, wet, but summer's coming. So we'll see. But yeah, no, that's where the Falcons are at. And as far as the draft, Scott, you keep saying it. The one guy that you are concerned with taking there is Shamar Stewart. We'll see how the draft falls. The other issue is that some of the other defensive players that make sense for the Falcons at 15 have some character flags, with Mike Green being the big one with multiple sexual assaults. You also have Walter Nolan with questions, and James Pierce, another one who there's some concerns there, which is unfortunate. All three guys, talent-wise, make all the sense in the world for the Falcons at 15, but with where the Falcons are at, I saw a question here. Who are the leaders now on this team? You got Bates still. I think Caden Ellis is a leader. I think Drake London's
a leader.
I was just going to say Drake London's emerging into a leader for sure. Of course, you got Matthews has been here for a long time as a leader as well. And you need Penix to step up into that role. We'll see. Now that he's the guy, how are they empowering him to be that? But I don't know if you are so staunch, competitive, full of veterans that you want to be taking, volatile personalities in terms of the character profile. But these guys,
Rusty said, I'm tired of hearing about the character profile stuff. You've passed on too many guys like that. And right now I just want somebody that can freaking play.
Yeah. I mean,
Micah, and again, I don't count Micah Parsons as a miss, because just like Jalen Walker right now, more people are talking about Jalen Walker as a pass rusher than they really were even talking about Micah Parsons as a pass rusher then. I was looking at Micah Parsons as the next Brian Urlacher. This is a 250-pound guy that's running 4.3s. He's a destroyer in the middle. Do you want him at 4? Well, in a redraft, he probably goes 1 or 2. Does it, right? The shines come off of Trevor. What's the Jacksonville? Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. The shines come off of him just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's probably, I love Trevor Lawrence in that. But I get it. And good morning, John Harrell. Hope you're doing good. Evan J, thanks for coming in with the super. Want to say hello to Michael Ronquillo as well. Thank you so much. Unbeatable 3210. Good morning, Scott and Nick. And before we're 30-something minutes into this thing, let's get to the title here.
Yeah.
Mel Kiper and Daniel Jeremiah and the Atlanta Falcons mock draft roundup. There's a zillion mock drafts. If I'm going to write about one, it's usually from either PFF, ESPN, or NFL.com. That's pretty much it. So I listen to these guys. I've been following Mel Kiper is basically the inventor of this business in the 80s. And he had the Atlanta Falcons going down and getting Mike Green. Let me see. I've got them both up here. Makes a good argument for him, but to me, what's interesting is the guys that are still available or not available. But he says, I changed his pick at the last minute. The idea of Alabama linebacker Jihad Campbell in the middle of the defense intrigued me, but the Falcons' need for edge rushers is too big to ignore. And he takes Green. We all know about Green's stats. And he says they surprised a lot of people and got a lot of scrutiny last year for how they handled the quarterback position. But could the team really bypass pass rush again with all of these guys down here? Well, yeah, they could. Daniel Jeremiah has the Falcons taking cornerback Will Johnson, 6'2", 295 pounds a corner, opposite AJ Terrell. Nick, there's questions about a lot of these edge rushers. At 15, there's gonna be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I think you misspoke on Will Johnson's weight. I think you said 295.
195, yeah. 6'2", 295 corner would be something special.
Oh my God. That's just something I make in Madden just to see what it looks like in space.
I play him at running back.
Yeah, God, unbelievable. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, again, those are the guys
and Nick, that was basically Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker outweighed 3 of his offensive linemen in 1980.
That's crazy.
And was a 60-meter indoor champion. I mean, that was that guy that I just said was basically
Herschel Walker.
Herschel Walker.
Yeah, remember Ron Dane? Gosh, he was.
Oh yeah, but too. I mean, again, they're like the closest thing I've seen to a freak of Herschel Walker compared to in my lifetime is like it might be LeBron. You know, who for me, LeBron James is one of the most physically gifted people to ever walk the planet.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah, no, both of those are good picks. Again, for Mike Green, Trance was let go from Virginia, not Virginia Tech, dismissed outright, ends up at Marshall and had a really good season at Marshall. I mean, what did he have? 17 sacks, 17.5 sacks, something like that, a really high pressure rate. And he was it's great. Like you can be a big fish in a small pond on a team like that, right? But also it makes it hard. Like I remember watching Khalil Mack back in the day at Buffalo. Like he's getting, it's like Grady Jarrett's like, do you have anybody else?
There you go. We've got a better example.
Yeah. But I mean, for a small school, that tends to happen if you have a first round caliber pass rusher, wide receiver. Teams can allocate resources to scheme those guys out. And even still, he got his versus Virginia Tech, Ohio State. I wish he had more matchups against Simmons. Of course, when you have the best pass rusher and you can dictate your matchup, why would you put your best pass rusher against the best offensive lineman they have? You don't do that. Good teams don't do that. So he rushed mostly off the right tackle spot there. But he was really productive, had a good time down at the Senior Bowl. Now, I don't think like in a typical, like a normal draft, he's probably somebody who's drafted more so in the 18 to 25 range, but with where this class is at right now this season, it makes sense for him to get, a slight bump. We're missing quarterbacks, wide receivers at the top, so everybody gets moved up 3 to 5 slots anyway. So he makes sense as long as you are comfortable and clear with the sexual assault, multiple different times allegations in the past, which, I don't know. Again, I think I said it on this show or the Broncos show, like these teams have FBI level background, like government clearance, nuclear code background checks for these guys. So they will put in the work. And if, they don't trust him or it's a pattern that they just don't want to put behind because it's a massive investment for these teams, then even though, some people like Rusty, it might not be palatable for them with Jalen Carter. Does Jalen Carter work at every situation? Let's say he goes to the Raiders, Vegas, everybody's getting arrested and driving 300 miles an hour there with his background. Does he work there? I don't know. I mean, maybe he's in jail. Gosh, it's different teams to have different levels of risk they can take on and infrastructure already in place to kind of steward those guys. So we'll see with Green. And as far as Will Johnson, he's one. We're at this time of year, Scott. No way that guy's there. Well, you say that about 50 guys. Somebody's going to be there. Will Johnson, Tet McMillan, their stock seems to be wavering a bit. Daniel Jeremiah, Mel Kiper, both those guys pushing them down a bit. I think Will Johnson could go as high as, 6 overall to the Raiders still, and I wouldn't bat an eye. But also he could fall to 17, 19, and I wouldn't bat an eye. That's just kind of how this class is. I think Field Yates has mentioned it. Daniel Jeremiah has mentioned it. There's 6 guys who are going to the top at pretty much top 10 no matter what. But after that, it's, picking names out of a hat. So we'll see how it falls. But these are both viable options. I'd be happy with either. And I think for Will Johnson specifically, you did sign Mike Hughes to a 3-year contract, but that doesn't keep me from adding the highest player on my board at a premium position, especially when what we're seeing, the cornerback market's starting to have a little bit of correction here. For a little bit, it was like cornerbacks market's kind of falling apart. What's going on here? Well, now we got Stingley, we got Horn, we got Sauce Gardner coming up here soon, Trent McDuffie. Cornerbacks having a little bit of a rebound. It is behind wide receiver, offensive tackle, edge rusher, but it's 4th, 5th on the board, and that's a premium position.
Mike Hughes got a 3-year contract. It's basically a 1-year deal, honestly, as far as the guaranteed money goes. And it was cornerback 4 money at $6 million. It will not, his money does not preclude you from going out and getting somebody else. And I wrote this yesterday on Atlanta Falcons on SI, and I compared Stingley's money. He got more. I don't remember what I wrote, but it was almost $100 million guaranteed, and Hughes got 9. That speaks to the difference in perceived value for a pair of free agents.
Yeah.
Well, we've got one now. Where I do think that makes a difference, and I agree with Kiper here, is I do think it makes a difference at linebacker. Mm-hmm. I'm okay going into the season with Caden Ellis, Devon Diablo, J.D. Bertrand, and then a wild card in Troy Anderson. I'm okay with those 4. Mm-hmm. I'm not okay with the secondary room and the edge room and the defensive line room, for that matter, where I think that goes in here. And Rio comes in, he goes, I wouldn't mind if the Falcons went for Malachi Starks. The best thing for us would be to trade down and get more assets, but we got to hit on those picks no matter what we do. And I agree. And it increases your chances of hitting if you have more picks. More picks is a better indicator of hit rate than the sliding scale of picks 1 through 50. There might be a 2% difference in pick 13 versus pick 15 over the last 50 years, but there's going to be a 30% difference in being able to pick up another second round pick and then having number 25 instead of number 15. Your probability goes up a lot. And for the Falcons, we've got a publisher mock draft coming out on SI, and there's no trades. I selected Mike Green. He was the guy there was only one edge guy gone. The Falcons had their pick of everybody. Pretty much every defensive player they wanted was still there. Trade down. Trade down. I could go for Starks. Starks has gone at 13 on Mel Kiper's. On Daniel Jeremiah's. He's gone at 13 to the Dolphins. There was a question here earlier about Emenwari. Emenwari's a freak. I'm okay with Nick Emenwari at 15 if you think he can become the next playmaker like Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton's worth a 15 for sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Appreciate the stars, Rio.
And also you mentioned you're pretty good at linebacker, but kind of like Ellis, your off-ball guys in this class and Jalen Walker and Jihad Campbell are a little bit tweener-ish. So if you're trying to run cover your ears, Scott, but a sim pressure world, then having guys who have that versatility to pin their ears back, whether it be a mug look over the A gap or you're walking them down to be more of a stand-up player on third down, those are options. Now, historically, linebacker in the first round is a really risky proposition because teams have not evaluated those positions very well. But still, guys that are viable options there for the Falcons. All the same, I mean, we ran the mock draft last Monday. We took Jahdae Barron, who I freaking love, Scott. I mean, just like ball production, tackling, athleticism, instincts, and by all accounts is a plus like work ethic character person. Like that's somebody who like maybe not the like superstar ceiling, but I think you can get yourself a Trent McDuffie type there, and you're with how much you want to play nickel in the NFL today. That's a really good value to get. But
he just went number 11 in Daniel Jeremiah's mock, so us getting him at 15 is good value. Is good value. And again, if he can play outside, I think he's more valuable out there. And then I move, and then I've got other options in the slot. But that's not a reach by any stretch of the imagination.
I think he's probably somebody who like kind of like Cooper DeJean because of the physicality and the run fit stuff. In a vacuum, a true boundary man cornerback, a Surtain, a Stingley is more valuable, but I don't think that's Barron's best fit. I think he's more of that new age. Like if you're going to be playing in slot, you need to have a freaking maniac with instincts and physicality to play the slot. We saw, was it Devon Witherspoon go 4 overall? That's 5 overall in that class. That's kind of that new age slot safety guy, bigger bodies.
Playmaker.
Playmaker, but has to be very smart and has to almost play. You have to cover like a cornerback, Scott, but play the run like a will linebacker. And it changes your defense a lot. Again, because of my Iowa Hawkeye fandom, I'm Cooper DeJean pilled, but like what you're able to do when you have a guy like that defensively to play the wider boxes and the 2 high safety shells and not have to blitz, that kind of stuff.
We'll come back to this.
Changes the defense. But yeah, that's interesting. We got Atlanta boy says Jalen Walker equals versatility. If he's there at 15, I take him. And are the Jags really trading? I haven't seen anything about the Jags trading. I mean, it makes sense that the Jaguars, new regime all around, they're going to have a long leash. And they're going to miss out probably on Carter and Hunter. For me, it makes a lot of sense for them to trade back if they can stack more picks. Now the Jags already have a lot of draft capital, a lot of value in this class, but if they can get 2026 capital by moving, that makes sense. Right now, I'm putting them in for taking Mason Graham with Penn, assuming Carter and Hunter are gone, but we'll see. I think they'd be smart to trade back because you're missing out. I was making this point earlier, Scott. It's always good to trade back for the Falcons. If you were sitting there picking 4 this year or 3, I might be sitting there saying, let's see who falls, because at the top, if you have a chance to get like a transcendent, franchise pillar,
Abdul Carter,
grade, yes, Abdul Carter,
Travis Hunter,
yes, one of those 2, then you're sitting there. I probably would rather just sit there and take the guy, but sitting there at 15, move back 10, 15 spots. I don't think the guy you're getting at 15 is going to be all that different from the guy you're getting at from 25 to 30 in this class. So that makes sense. But for where the Jags are, I think you probably sit and wait to see if one of those guys fall, just in case.
There's some differences on the Georgia guys. The big one with the big split is Michael Williams. He's like, there's very different. And I wrote this one down beforehand to call out. He's 10 on Kiper and 28th on Jeremiah. James Pierce has almost come out of the first round for both of these guys. 28 for Kiper and not in the first round. But Walker, they agree on. He's top 8 on both. He's 8, I believe, on 8 to the Panthers. Yeah, on Kiper, and 5 to the Jaguars. So Walker, yeah, but I like the idea of his versatility too. Basically, a Caden Ellis. If I could clone Caden Ellis, now I can bring guys from everywhere. I can bring guys from everywhere in on first or second down too, because I've got the linebacker aspect of the game covered. I love the idea, Atlanta boy 88. It looks right now like he might not be there. That he could be gone already.
And right now, Scott, I would say that
wanted to come back to it.
You mentioned Nick Anamori. It was a Nick Amanawari one. Unless he's saying that I can cover. I'm not 220.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, it was. Do you think he can cover at 6'3", 220? He's certainly got the physical traits for it. And in a base nickel, which these guys are in 5 defensive backs at least 66% of the time on second and third down. I mean, the nickel's almost a starter now. That I think he can cover well enough. My concern is, and I haven't watched him to know this. Is he Taylor Mays or is he, Kyle Hamilton? Kyle Hamilton isn't half the athlete that Taylor Mays was. He's just not. He's 10 times the football player. Yeah. Taylor Mays was unbelievable athletically. Couldn't read a game to save his life. Should have played edge. At 230 pounds, they should have made him a designated pass rusher. Get the quarterback. That's your only job. Couldn't read a game. I don't know that about Nick Amanawari. I've never watched him play a game to know, is he instinctive or is he just the best athlete on the field?
How do I put it? I wouldn't say that he is incredibly instinctive, but he is long enough and athletic enough that he can make up for it. Sometimes he plays a little timid, Scott, and that's part of what he's being coached. Maybe that's a little bit of safety play in general. Like, you are the last line of defense. If you guess wrong, it's a touchdown. But there are times that I feel like, especially coming downhill and triggering, like you watch somebody like Kyle Hamilton, he's reading the play before it even, or Ed Reed, right? That's the perfect example, making the play before it even happens. And it's like, oh my gosh, he vacated that area. Well, he knew what was happening. He was triggering before the quarterback's eyes even got there. And I see Amanawari be a little bit late on those, specifically in the quick pass game or the run game. I do think that he's a little bit stiff also. Like, if you think like, oh, he's such a good athlete, we can play him in slot like a cornerback. Well, he's going to have some issues against some wide receivers sometimes. I think if you want that body type, I'd rather go with Barron than Amanawari. But his ability to play strong safety, if you're looking to buzz a safety down into the box, I think he's also athletic enough, long enough that if you want to buzz the other safety down, he can do that too. And he can play the single high. Now, that's not his best spot, but he can do it. But if you're looking for somebody to play like man match at the safety spot, like a slot cornerback, I think he's a little bit stiff, and sometimes I think he's a little bit timid to trigger on things, but still freak athlete all the same.
If I've got 5 on the line of scrimmage, or 5 defensive backs on the board all the time, on the field, I want him to be a box safety. I want him to use his physicality, and if he needs to track back, so be it. I want him to freelance. That's where I want him. Yeah, you've got your responsibilities, but I want you attacking. If I've got an athlete like that, I want him attacking. Troy Green's good question. He says, is DeMarco Hellams getting a bump to starter after an injury? Probably, because they put him in Sharpie as starter last year for the most part when they didn't make any new additions. It was him and Richie Grant, and Hellams had beaten out Richie Grant already. They didn't make any new additions in the secondary over the course of the offseason until Hellams got hurt. Now, logically speaking, he's got what, four starts, maybe? He's hardly played in the NFL, third-year guy, 6th-round draft pick, was okay as a rookie when he did play. He was good for a rookie, but he wasn't good enough to be a starter on a playoff team. And coming off a season-ending injury, he's not quite starting over, but I'm not counting on him. I can't count on him to be my starter. If that's how it works out, so be it. But I want competition for him, and if Hellams beats him, great. Mm-hmm. Talked about this a lot, Nick. Last offseason, guys were too damn comfortable. They already had their jobs before they ever stepped on the field. And we need more competition especially across the defense. Yeah. There's more proven guys on offense, but we need more competition on every level, every position of the defense where guys are fighting week in and week out for their job until they're established. DeMarco Hellams wasn't established last year, and he was given the job. There is no safety that is on the roster that's established next to Jesse Bates. He's earned the job. He wasn't given the job. Hellams is close. I mean, he's about the only safety still on the roster.
Yeah. There's a number of competition across the roster. You're going to have to, finger in the dam leaking at some spots this season, just with where you're at team building wise on the defense. And you roll the dice and you're hoping to hit a Yahtzee on some of those, but not all of them will. You'll reevaluate next season, but you don't have enough premium selections to fix edge rusher, to fix interior defensive line, to add another wide receiver, to add a safety, add a linebacker, to add a nickel, so it's really going to depend on what's available for you at the time, and then try to scheme and coach and develop guys at those other spots and reevaluate a year from now. But there'll be weaknesses on the roster this season. So it gives you options in the draft, right? You're not pigeonholed. You don't have Bronco fans screaming running back no matter what at 20, which is never the case. Silly. But that's we'll see what happens. Atlanta Boy says, seen online the Jags are opening to trade Travon Walker. Wherever that is, that's interesting. The thing, Falcons are in cap issues right now. Granted, cap issues are kind of fake because you can do the void year stuff, but all the same, like, you can have Drake London contract coming up here pretty soon. He's going to get paid, Scott. So you probably need to get out
for that. And I want to hit this. Let's come back to Drake.
But as far as trading for Walker, I also saw trading for Hendrickson earlier. Well, I'm a little bit more amenable to Walker just because he's a 8-year option versus Henderson, probably like a 2-year option to figure that out with where the Falcons are at. I don't think Trey Henderson makes more sense, but Walker would be fine. You're paying him too. And do you want to give up a first-round pick plus a $30 million a year contract for Travon Walker with where you're at right now without a lot of cap space, without a lot of premium draft picks for a team that needs to hit on some guys to just the churn of the roster right now? I don't know if the Falcons are the team that makes sense for, even though they need difference makers along the defensive line.
I'd be okay with this right now because he does have 2 years of cost control left. Now his 5th-year option will be expensive, but it's still going to be cheaper than his second contract. So I got 2 years. He's a 3rd-year guy, just finished his 3rd year, 10 sacks and 10.5 sacks the last 2 years. So I would absolutely be interested in this one. This one for sure. He's 24 years old. I mean, he just turned 24. He's got 10 years ahead of him. Yeah. Okay. I said we want to come back. Good question, Atlanta Boy. Appreciate it. I want to come back to this and we're going to get out of here. talking about Kyle Pitts and the miss and the guys that were taken after him. Well, I think the guy that went directly after him, the pick after him, was Jamar Chase. Went number 5 overall. If I'm not mistaken, I think he went 5. Either way, he was within the next.
I was trying to find where the Trevon Walker rumors were coming from. It's from a source that I would not trust. Let's just put that out there. I would.
Yeah, I don't know why they'd want to get rid of him with 2 years of cost control left, and he's coming into his own, and he's 24 years old.
Yeah, but I would not put much weight on where I saw it from. But anyway, sorry, re-ask your question.
No, that's okay. Jamar Chase went 5, if I'm not mistaken, because the Dolphins traded down, and they really wanted Jamar Chase, and they ended up not getting him. Now, they did okay anyway, but they made that huge trade with San Francisco, traded back up to 6 because they thought the Bengals would take Penei Sewell, and then they'd be there at 6. That's the thing. That's how it worked out. Now, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, would you trade? Now, I know the initial reaction to this, but walk with me here. Work with me on this. You've got Kyle Pitts for $10 million, and then you're free and clear. Okay. Would you trade Kyle Pitts for Jamar Chase and his new contract? If you're the Atlanta Falcons, are you in a position to take on $112 million guaranteed for a wide receiver?
I mean, yeah. I think the answer is still yeah, because he is probably the most transcendent non-quarterback in the league. It's hard for where you're at right now, but he is special. I mean, you talk about with guys who are defining players in the entire league, Chase, Parsons, maybe Dexter Lawrence for their age and whatnot, but and Jefferson also. Don't want to forget him. I'm forgetting somebody, Jefferson too, but those are special players. Yeah,
and I it's not as easy for me as a fantasy football player to just say, well, yes, you take Jamar Chase. It's not as easy as that. I would really, where the Falcons are right now, are you in position to give $37 million a year to a wide receiver? I don't know that right reflexively to say, yes, get him, do it. I don't know, probably. But I think it's because it's coming up because Drake London, while he might not get 37, he's going to knock on the door of 30 a year.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with one of those guys, but not 2 of them. Like T. Higgins now is in that neighborhood too. Now you've got all this money. You've got half your salary cap tied into T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow. That's an unbalanced team. That's the Atlanta Falcons of the 2005 to 2015, 16 range, where it was all offense and no defense, and you couldn't close anybody out. And frankly, I still think the Atlanta Falcons roster in that 10-year period was better than where the Cincinnati Bengals are right now. So my conservative nature, it scares the crap out of me to put that much of my resources into one player. I almost like what Kansas City did with Tyreek. Let's move him and get a bunch of picks.
The issue is Tyreek was
before I have to pay him so much money.
Yeah, the issue with that is that was Tyreek Hill third contract, and he was a malcontent a little bit in there as well. He saw one of the contract. I think it was the Christian Kirk contract. He's like, wait a second. That guy's getting that. This is BS. I should be getting more. He's right.
Like we said, it's not about the dollars so much as it is the status. When you start talking, what's the difference between $27 and $30 million? The difference is he's ahead of me.
Yep.
That's the difference.
Yeah, I think, and also you're talking about the contracts right now. We're another year away from the cap moving up. I think that's perfectly reasonable if Drake London is asking for something in the 30 to 34 range, just because of it's not always who's the best, it's who's next to get paid. Right. And CeeDee Lamb gets 34 a year, AJ Brown 32, Amon-Ra, St. Brown 30, Ayuk 30, Tyreek Hill 30, Waddle 28. I mean, he's going to be in the neighborhood with those guys. So I think 30 to 34 is probably what you need to start budgeting for. If not, I mean, look to trade him, I guess.
About 10% of your cap by the time that money starts hitting. Okay, that's reasonable. Yeah. But then another guy, 2 of those guys? Ew.
I think it's hard, but I think if you have a chance to get somebody like that caliber, you figure out how to make it work. It's kind of like
I guarantee you get 30 calls for Drake London then.
Yeah, you should be.
You make a move like that.
For T. Higgins. Yeah, but I kind of think about it like how the Colts kind of had to pinch their nose a little bit and recast the die on defense a lot of years, but you were paying Harrison, you were paying Wayne, you were paying Manning, and you kind of just tried to figure out those other spots, but it was the engine that drove the car. So it's not always the perfect team build, especially for defensive, offensive line pilled people like you and I, Scott. But if you have such an advantage there, I think you don't let the talent go all the same. So it's not normal how to build the team that way, but I do think it's the way to go if you have those guys.
Yeah, it's just that, again, my conservative nature, putting all those resources into one guy always just scares the crap out of me. My cynical nature on that. But, as Justin says, we should keep our young core together. And that's the idea with Drake London, Bijan, and Penix. And after next year, I've advocated, I think you can re-sign Tyler Algier. You need another back. You're going to need – I don't want 400 touches for Bijan because then he's done in 2 years. The 300 number is good for me. I like that. I want more efficient touches. I want more yards per play than having him run between tackles 250 times a game. Jeremy Sean, good to see you. Says, I miss you, Scott, on Broncos for breakfast. Well, thank you, sir. I certainly appreciate it. I hope you're doing well. But we are going to get out of here. We will be back on Monday at 8:35 Eastern. It's been a great conversation with y'all. We had Rio come in and Evan and Atlanta Boy come in with some super chats, a couple of them. Certainly appreciate you. Hit us up in the comments if you have any questions, clarify on any of some of the nonsense I spewed today. I'm there to back it up. All I ask is, don't be combative. Be respectful. I respect your opinion, and if you want to have a conversation on my channel, respect mine. I'm not saying I'm right. I'll just tell you what I think. But we're going to get out of here. That means we will be one more weekend closer to the NFL draft. And the weather is perfect. Get outside, y'all. Have a great weekend. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time.
Peace.